Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of The Warm-Up on 97.3 ESPN FM. Rich Quinones here. We'll take you up to 2 o'clock, switching gears a little bit as we do every week. We love to talk little combat sports. If you have not heard of Final Fight Championships, you will. They'll be making their U.S. debut June 3rd in Florida. Kind enough to join me on the line today is their CEO, Orsad Zovko, and Hoplite Entertainment CEO, John Smith. And guys, first and foremost, I know it's a busy time for you. I appreciate a couple moments.
Hi, how are you?
We're doing well. And Orsad, let's start with you for a moment, because I know you guys have dominated Europe with well over 20 events, and we start to see how combat sports has just exploded in the U.S., especially over the last decade or so. It seems as though this was kind of an easy decision for you to really start to kind of put your imprint on the U.S. market. Was this something that you wanted to do years ago, or is it all about timing right now for you guys in FFC?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in this business like more than 20 years in production and TV, and last couple of years I decided to put these things together with a fighting sport, and my partner, John Smith, actually he pushed me last 2-3 years. He was pushing me to come to U.S., and we decided finally last year, end of last year, we decided to move the whole production and the whole set. We decided to move to U.S. In Europe, we are pretty dominant. We are probably the leading brand in Europe, and it's not just about fighting, because me and John, our background is also the fighting sport. Besides the fighting sport, our background is production, so we are paying lots of attention to production, and I think we will bring something a little bit different to U.S. markets.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned, too, you guys were dominant in Europe, one of the leading and fastest-growing combat sports organization. And I want to get John in on this. And again, CEO of Hoplite Entertainment, John Smith. And I know, John, you guys produce a lot of Emmy award-winning programming. And again, this seems like, we always talk about the fights themselves and the audience and the venue is all well and good, but you also need good production value, right? Especially if you're trying to push this to networks, if you're trying to sell this to a different fan base. And it seems as though this is kind of the natural fit for you guys. Talk about, from your end, what makes this partnership so appealing.
I think for us, it was the fact, I grew up around fight. I've always been a fan of fight, whether it was boxing, kickboxing. I've even been to sumo wrestling matches over the years. So, to me, this is just something that, it's one of the oldest sports in the known world. It was, in ancient Greece they were doing this. So, when it comes to fight in general, I think it's just, the sport's clearly growing all over the world. And for us, what you just kind of touched on was really what impressed me about the league when I first, since my first FFC event about 6 years ago in Zagreb, is the fact that it's about the production. The live audience experience is really incredible. The ring girls, instead of being in bikinis, are walking around in evening gowns, high heels, and still look amazing and fantastic. But the shows are really designed to offer a production aesthetic. And, for our partnership with CBS, for U.S. shows, as well as the international we're doing, we're live broadcasts in over 50 countries around the world.
Wow.
And that production value is a huge component of this, just because, it's one thing to go to a fight and be like, yay, knockout, yay, TKO, but we're offering an experience where when the fan, whether they're a casual fan or an avid fan, comes to a live show, they're just getting stuff that is truly unique, that allows the fans to realize we actually, they mean just as much as the guys in the ring.
It's interesting, too, because when you look at the explosion and just the influx of talent around the country, in U.S., in Europe, with combat sports, and Orsad, this is more in line to what I was thinking before, as far as we look at UFC, we look at Bellator, not your competitors, I would imagine, because you probably have a bunch of guys that fought on those platforms signed under contracts. But to me, that gives you guys a leg up because you've already got that talent, right? It's low-bearing fruit. You've seen some of these guys fight. They fought on the biggest networks, the biggest scales, the biggest arenas, the biggest venues for a bunch of titles. I think when you have talented fighters as well, whether it's MMA or kickboxing, it only helps give you guys a lot more credibility, right? It certainly helps with more branding. Is that something that you guys were looking to accomplish as well?
It does on two things. I'll comment on that. First is that we're not really looking at these other promotions as competitors, so to speak. I guess from a general public standpoint, they're going to view it that way regardless of what we say. I mean, our whole thing is there's enough of a fan base in this sport.
Yep.
They're massively interested in fights. So whether it's kickboxing or boxing, whether it's Bellator or HBO boxing, people are straight out just interested in fight. And so that's kind of how we started. I mean, Orsat, you can speak a little bit to the fighters.
Yeah, our concept is very unique. UFC is a clear MMA show, and I think we are the first one who decided to put completely two different shows inside one night. So we have kickboxing show and MMA show, completely separate shows inside one night. And that's also one of very unique things what we are doing. Besides that, like you mentioned before, lots of guys who were top UFC fighters or top Bellator fighters, at the moment they signed exclusive contracts with us. Mm-hmm. So we are really trying to put the best what we could find in the U.S. market, and we are bringing top fighters from Europe, and we are putting all this together with the production level what we are doing. I think it will be an amazing experience for all fighting fans.
We know the first event is going to take place in Florida, June 3rd, early June, and I'm wondering, without showing your hand too much, what for people that are going to attend this event, what's going to stand out to them? What are they going to be able to walk away from this event and say, okay, wow, these guys, FFC, they're really different here?
I think it's two different things, to be quite honest. One, I think, is that live audience experience, because we're the only promotion that I know of right now in the world aggressively that does in the same night. We have six kickboxing matches, an intermission, to call it that. Everything changes, and then there's 6 MMA fights, as if
that's
two
pretty
completely
neat.
Different live shows for one ticket price.
Wow. And
then simultaneously, I will argue that, the fights we've had in the past, this is FFC 24, it's the knockouts. These guys aren't going in the ring because they're getting paid huge sums of money, and they kind of, don't want to get hit, and they kind of back down. And there's a lot of fights recently through a lot of different promotions globally that have ended where, audiences are booing, where they're kind of going, there's no knockout, there's no TKO, guys are on the ground, and unless you know anything about jiu-jitsu, you're looking what's going on the ground, just kind of scratching your head going, great, you're wrestling. And I've been to a lot of these. I've been to live fights all over the world, from, Slovenia to Vegas. And when people are when people go to the ground and they win that way, very rarely does an audience rise to their feet and start yelling and cheering. When people get knocked out, it happens all the time. And to be honest, our last, we had some fights earlier this year in Athens, and when we were there, 70% of our fights ended by knockout in the second round.
Wow. And
very, very few promotions that we've seen have been able to do that. And obviously we can't control who knocks who out, but what we can control is our matches. We can't control which fighter we lining up to fight which guy. And these guys come in the ring to bang.
And John, I think that's a great point, by the way, because I've done enough fights on television with boxing and MMA and broadcasting where you're absolutely right. When people love the knockouts, but they also want to enjoy a highly contested contest, right? They don't
in the ring.
Yeah, they don't want to see the
ring.
Exactly. And I think that's where you have to find that balance, right? Good matchmaking, promote it, brand it, get the crowds in there, and if you get that knockout, at least they can walk away and say, you know what, for 2 or 3 rounds, that was an explosive fight. I think that's...
You also get, and that's cut you off, but what you also get is we don't do ours in an octagon or a cage, it's in a ring. So you're getting kickboxing in a ring people are used to seeing. MMA in a ring, unless people were following Pride back when that was around, you just don't see that in the U.S. And that's, the exact same ring our guys are kickboxing in. You're watching guys MMA, which means they don't get the luxury of leaning against the cage, taking a break, hooking it with their toes to try to use it for leverage.
Yeah.
It really is a lot different. And I'm not going to say it's not better or worse in any scenario.
Sure.
There's no disrespect at all to the guys that are fighting in cages. That's, you're still fighting. But the difference is, in a ring, you hit a cable rope, it's a lot less forgiving than a cage.
Oh, yeah. No. It's a different dynamic. And again, talking little combat sports, great promotion, getting ready to really make their imprint in the U.S. Final Fight Championships on the line. Their CEO, Orsat Zovko, and Hoplite Entertainment CEO, John Smith. Rich Quinones here. We'll take you up to 2 o'clock. again, for you guys out there, it's funny too. Where we are in our backyard is Atlantic City, and then of course we've got Philly, we've got New York, a bunch of listeners all over the place, and a lot of combat sports fans, right? A lot of boxing fans, a lot of MMA fans, and Orsat, I'll kind of bring it back to you for a moment. The success you had in Europe, have you found that the European fan base is a little more rabid, a little more fanatical than, say, the U.S. fan base? And it's not to put you on the spot. There's no right or wrong answer. But what was it that you kind of saw from the European fan base when you're like, wow, this is a winner? Like, they kind of get it. And how are you going to be able to bring that to the U.S.?
I think on the first place, European fan base is very well educated. They really appreciate good fight. So everything what we are mentioning before every event to all fighters, it doesn't matter you win or you lose. If your performance was on the highest level, we'll call you again. Yeah. Even if you win on really poor way, we'll not call you again.
Right.
So the fighters who are fighting for FFC, they're really giving 150%. And that's the thing what the European audience will appreciate until this moment, That's actually one of the keys of our success in Europe.
And again, FFC 24, June 4th, June 3rd, I'm sorry, Ocean Center in Daytona Beach. Check these guys out online, ffcpro.com. John, last one for me, for you. When you look at, we talked a little bit about the production value and being able to air good content. And then like anything else, at the end of the day, when you start to air good content, there's more of a demand on this. I mean, are you guys looking down the road for just kind of a real, just a huge global scale audience where it doesn't matter what part of the world you live in, you'll be able, either it's PPV or live streaming or click of a button or any type of Comcast or any network provider, CBS, Fox? I mean, is the idea, okay, in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is going to be just global? Anywhere you go, you're going to be able to see highlights or fights.
Yeah, I think 100%. Because, I mean, one of the major advantages we have to our brand is that because we have both kickboxing and MMA, we can go in countries that other brands can't. For example, in France, MMA is outlawed. So you're only watching kickboxing content. In the Middle East, they're not really into kickboxing. They just want MMA. So, I mean, I really do believe as we kind of start breaking into the U.S. market, and when, fans see, whether it's from watching it in their house or it's from literally coming to a live event, I think when fans see the quality of the production and the quality of the fight cards, it really is going to grow, I think, in a great way. And again, our process here is not to be, openly competing with any other brand of promotion. In fact, we know most of the owners of the other ones and their personal friends. And on the flip of this, we just want to put on a good show, and at the end of the day, it's like, look, if you want to come watch a really good show, again, whether it's in your living room or it's in a live audience, the goal here is to grow a brand that fans know that when they watch an FFC fight, they're going to just see dynamic fights.
And you're right. I mean, just to kind of piggyback that, one hand washes the other, right? You scratch my back, I scratch yours. At the end of the day, everyone's trying to help brand promote as well. I always joke with people on the air, especially when I talk to either network guys or promoters. I mean, look, everyone can have their hand in the cookie jar. There's enough cookies to go around. It's just
100%, especially in this sport. I mean, there's plenty. I always use the analogy with the sandbox. And
there you go.
Plenty of room for all of us in the sandbox. I mean, Michael Buffer is an example. Is going to be doing, it looks like they're going to be doing a good chunk of our fights, if not the majority of them, in the U.S. And Michael's not exclusive to any one group.
Sure.
I mean, he's on everything from HBO boxing to you name the fights, he's done them. And Michael's a friend of both Orsat and myself, and that's just an example where it's like I 100% agree with you. Where it's like, look, guys, this is the fastest growing sport. That's why there's not just a single league. There's multiple leagues.
Yeah.
And I think there's room for multiple leagues.
I agree with that assessment as well. Orsat, last one for me, for you. Again, you've dominated the European market, and I'm just wondering, is there, and this might might throw you off a little bit, this question, because I'm always fascinated when there's successful business entities or ventures out there, or really sound marketing people, and they kind of know what they're doing, it's successful. Is there one thing that did not work with this in Europe that you're like, okay, it's not going to work in the U.S.? We have to kind of bury that we're just going to kind of put it to the back burner?
Honestly, the most important things, I think the fight card and the highest level of production, I think that's the base which is equally important in the Europe and US. Of course, for us it's a little bit different because this is our first event in US. But because of John and Hoplite, because of their experience here in the US market, the whole operation will be a little bit easier. But our plans are, like you said before, our plans are big, and we are planning to do global. And we are going into that direction because there is no too many brands in the world already that they are producing events in Europe and US. If you put on the side UFC and just Bellator, they just did first event in Europe. Mm-hmm. No other brand is producing events in Europe and US because it's really difficult. It's really difficult. It's a different market. Production-wise, it's very difficult. So, if we are in 3, 4, or 5 top brands in the world, in the first year, we are more than happy.
And it gets kicked off June 3rd at the Ocean Center Arena in Daytona Beach, Florida. Perfect time. Weather's going to be great. A lot of fanfare. And then, of course, with the excitement running high, you turn around, you blink, you got FFC 25 strikes again 7 days later on June 10th at the Springfield Mass Mutual Center Arena in up there in Boston in Massachusetts. So, guys, I wish you the best of luck. Don't be a stranger. I appreciate a couple moments, and the best of luck with the venture going forward on the U.S.
Totally. Thanks a ton. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys. Be well.